What's up, everybody? Brett Okamoto alongside UFC lightweight Grant Dawson, who takes on Bobby Green this weekend, October 7th, UFC Fight Night, his first main event ever of his career. And I'm excited to talk to you, Grant. I mean, I've talked to you before. I think this is kind of one of our first like Zoom one-on-one interviews, but I got to say, there is a strong Nebraska connection between you and I. And you have a heads up on being my mother's favorite fighter of all time because she is like the biggest Nebraska Huskers fan of all time. She was actually at Memorial Stadium just the other week catching the game. She was at the Colorado Nebraska Huskers game. So first thing I got to ask you is if you are a Nebraska Huskers fan.
I mean, I'm not a huge football fan, honestly. I
Really?
played football in high school. I wanted to play football like as my dream, and I'm not very good at it. So once I got into MMA, I'm not a super big football fan. My two favorite teams would have to be the Chiefs and the Packers because my dad is such a big Packers fan because he's originally from Wisconsin. But if you're going college, then yeah, I'm rooting for the Huskers. But I don't watch a whole lot of football though. But tell your mom thank you.
All right. I'm sure she'll take it. She would have been very excited had you been like a bleed red Huskers kind of guy. But if they're your favorite, then I think she'll accept that. Like I mentioned right off the bat, man, first main event. I feel like this is the question that always gets asked when guys get their first main event: is does it change anything for you? Does it feel like, oh, this should have came sooner, or this is coming at the right time? Just sort of like your thoughts on getting that phone call and saying like, hey, you're the guy at the top of the card.
I feel like it's coming at the right time. It does change a little bit. Just we're doing 5 rounds and everything instead of three. But I've got a pretty good gas tank. I've got pretty good cardio. I'm kind of a grinder when it comes to this. So I do think that 2 extra rounds helps me over Bobby. And I think that in my last fight, the big statement that I wanted to make was you can put me in these spots, co-main event against a dude I was an underdog against a really, really good fighter with a really big win streak, and I would still be able to perform. I think I did that. I think I showed the UFC that you can put me in these spots, and I'm going to be able to get it going. I'm not going to crack under the pressure. So I think I'm being rewarded for my last fight, and I could not be happier with the matchup, the time frame, and the spot on the card.
Yeah, from a competitive standpoint, because there's kind of two components to it, right? It's like the exposure standpoint of being in the main event, and then there's also the competitive standpoint of 2 extra rounds. It kind of seems like most guys are either in one camp or they're like, yeah, I like the extra time to work. Give me extra time to work and make sure that I can get this victory. Or other guys are like, I don't want to fight for an extra 10 minutes. Who wants to fight for an extra 10 minutes? Like, which kind of side of that coin are you on?
Right now, I am on the side of I don't want to fight for an extra 10 minutes, but I haven't done it yet. So I will let you know after the fight. I don't get paid for overtime. So I'm going to go in there and try to get it out of there as quick as possible. But I am ready to go 5 rounds. Again, I think 5 rounds helps me more than it helps Bobby. So I think this is a really good matchup to see what it's like in those later rounds. I think Bobby's going to stay super safe. It's going to be hard to get him out of there early. I think I am going to hit 4, maybe even round 5, and we're going to see what Grant Dawson is made of.
Yeah, yeah. How about that? The other side of it, the exposure side. Are you thinking about that? That like, hey, I'm going to have more eyeballs on me, or like, hey, this is the promotion showing a little. Like you mentioned, your last fight was a co-main. This is just another extension of that. Are you looking at it as an opportunity of like that side of it? The exposure and sort of like the confidence of putting you in a main event.
Absolutely. I feel like every time I fight, my exposure goes up a little bit. I think my biggest issue has been I get a big win. So, for example, I fought Mark Madsen, got a huge win. Everybody was talking about me. Everybody was super excited to see me fight again. And then I had a 9-month layoff in between fights, and people forget. People, they have short memories in this game, as they should. I do think coming off a big win over Demir, and this is a pretty quick turnaround for me in a main event spot. I think this skyrockets my career. I think the skills are already there. We know that. I think it skyrockets the money, and it skyrockets just the popularity, which is a big part of this game.
Well, how do you feel the UFC has looked at you so far? I mean, they seem to like these contender series guys, and they want to put them in positions to succeed. I would say, looking at your record, like they haven't necessarily given you any handouts. I mean, you haven't had like this quick route, straight into the top 10. How have you felt, sort of like UFC's matchmaking and kind of how they viewed you since coming off the show?
Yeah, I think they like me. I think they're not they're not trying to like take care of me like they probably are somebody like Patty Pimblett. Obviously, he's a superstar. He moves the needle way more than I do. But I think that I think when they look at fighters, you fall into one of three categories, maybe two out of three categories, and that's, this guy's a gatekeeper. He's going to stick around. He's going to put on good fights. He'll win two, lose one type of situation. You got superstars, your Patty Pimbletts, your Sean O'Malley's, your Conor McGregor's of the time, and then you got your future contenders. You're like, okay, he doesn't have like the biggest following. He's not the most exciting dude. But if we don't stop this dude, he's going to win a belt. He's going to keep beating people that we put in front of him. And I think that's kind of where they're putting me right now, which I'm 100% okay with. When I got signed to the UFC, the game plan was to slow roll it. I'm not ready. I mean, now I am, but back then I wasn't ready to get put into a title fight right away. So we wanted to slow roll it, build money, build wealth, get the contracts that I want. And now I'm in the main event. I got the contract I got more money in this fight than I had asked for, which is fantastic. Now I'm ready to start fighting those really big, tough dudes because the money is right and my technique and skill is ready to be put into those spots.
Is that, man, I love that approach. It's so mature and so real. Is it hard though? I think all of us, if we would be given the option, we want to be the exciting superstar guy. Like, is it hard to be like, that's not me, like is it, how did you kind of come to that conclusion? And was it difficult to say like, that's not me?
Well, I think the biggest part is I'm a realist. I'm very real with myself. I don't have a whole lot of power. Like I don't have a whole lot of knockout, crazy one-shot killer thing. It's not something you can work on. You're either born with it or you're not. And I was gifted in other ways. So when I get into these firefights, knowing that I can't just put somebody's lights out like that makes it easier for me to be like, okay, like stay safe, be technical, and get where I need to get to. Cardio is my gift. Cardio is the thing that, I don't have power, but I got cardio, so let's use the cardio. And I think it's easy outside of the cage to be like, oh, I want to put on a show and I want to do jumping spin kicks off the cage. And then when you get in there, you're like, oh, dude, I just want to win and get this over with. So I've been competing my whole life with whether it's wrestling, football, everything. And for me, it's always been, how can I win? What is the easiest way for me to get the victory?
Mm-hmm. As obviously you've been involved in this game for a long time, and you've sparred a lot of different styles and everything. Like, do you feel like you're lucky in your gift? Do you feel like if you could choose between one of the two, like it's better to have cardio and be buttoned up, or do you feel like those guys who have the power, they just have a natural sort of advantage over everybody else?
I feel like cardio is king. I think that it's the thing that separates the good from the great. It doesn't matter how technical you are, you're not going to be able to finish everybody. And if you can't keep a pace, you're in trouble. Colby Covington, I don't think he's a very good fighter, but his wrestling and his cardio is so good that it doesn't really matter. Like his striking doesn't need to be crisp and clean because at any point he's in trouble, he can just push the pace on you, take you down, and wear on you. So I do think that cardio is the better option to have. Obviously, if I could have a little bit more power and the cardio, I would take it. But if they ask me, you can only have one, I'm taking the cardio all day.
Can you talk about just like how, as you start to get into the top 10, which I believe you're ranked number 10 going into this fight, um, just we talk about this all the time, and I feel like it kind of gets handed back and forth between different divisions. Like right now, bantamweight is pretty exciting. A lot of people talking about bantamweight and just the parity that's there, but it kind of always comes back to lightweight. It's like it's so deep. It's just the toughest division to be in. Have you felt that? And do you agree with that? Like, do you feel like just from a physiological standpoint that you have been given the toughest challenge as far as your weight?
Yes, I do agree that it is the most difficult weight class, and here's why. If you go top 15 to top 15, 135 and 155 are pretty similar. You got former world champions, a lot of them in both weight classes. You got guys with amazing records who have fought everybody. It's a good mix of really, really good fighters. But if you go past top 15, and I'm talking like literally number 16, 17, 18, at 135, it's not as deep, right? Name me a guy that you're like, wow, that dude is just untouchable outside of the top 15 at 135. I'm sure you could, but it might take you a second. But if you go to 55, there's so many dudes that should be in the top 15. They're just not because there's only room for 15 of them. Like Drew Dober is outside the top 15, which is crazy. The dude's a stud. You got so many good guys outside the top 15, and they're only getting better, and they're only coming up faster and faster. So I do think that I am in the toughest weight class. Oh, and the other thing about 155 is the champion, Islam Makhachev, looks pretty untouchable right now. Whereas at 35, it's kind of like, well, the champ was Aljo, and every fight that he went into, he was the underdog in his last three, ended up winning close decisions, and then fought a dude that he was the favorite against and gets finished. So there's not like it's a tough road. And then when you get to the belt, you got to fight Islam Makhachev. Like that is what separates 155 from 135, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you add to the fact that those guys at the top, and you can't blame them for doing this, but they don't really want to fight the guys that are coming up. So they kind of want to fight each other because that's where the money is, that's where the exposure is. They don't tend to like to give you the guys who are ranked number 10 opportunities. So it's hard to get to number 10. It's hard to stay at number 10. It's hard to get a fight with number 3. And it's hard to beat number 3, and then it's really hard to beat number 1. So yeah, I think lightweight is definitely the toughest division to be in. And that brings me to my next question. That's Bobby Green. Like, where do you see Bobby Green? Obviously, Bobby Green is very, very experienced, and he's put on a lot of shows, and he's really getting a lot of, I think, the credit that he's deserved over the last few years, which is fans really enjoying him as a competitor. Do you see this as a step up? Do you see it as how do you see it related to some of the other challenges that you fought so far?
Basically, what you're asking me is what everybody else has been asking me is, do I feel like I'm fighting backwards? And the answer for me is no, I don't feel like I'm fighting backwards. I think outside of the champion, everything past that is all opinionary. Everything is like, he could be at, like, for example, Dan Hooker is ranked, better than I am. I'm coming off of a 30-27 easy, dominated every second fight, and he's coming off of a split decision. It doesn't make sense that he's ranked at number 9 and I'm ranked at number 10. So the numbers are really like opinionary. With Bobby, he's been in the top 15 for years, and a lot of people don't remember that because he's been in the game forever. He's a very, very experienced fighter. He's made other fighters like Fiziev look mortal. In his fight with Fiziev, it was a very, very close fight. Personally, I gave it to Bobby. Now, it was close enough that I wasn't going to argue about it, but he's a very good fighter. I don't think this is a step back, and he has everything that I want to go against. He's a veteran. He's not going to get intimidated by who I am. He's not going to get intimidated by my wrestling. He's seen it all. He's going to bring a very high pace fight to the game in my first main event, my first 5-rounder. Everything I could have asked for has been falling into place perfectly, and I am taking Bobby Green extremely seriously because I know how dangerous he is.
And dangerous in what way? Like, when you look at him and you're like his paths to victory, like what do you really need to respect in Bobby Green?
It's his hands, and anybody can get knocked out, but I'm not super worried about getting like one shot slept. The thing that I'm more worried about is just him touching me more times than I can get to him, right? We've noticed that when guys stand in front of him and try to brawl with him, he's very, very good. He's very good at like touching you and moving, getting out of the way, not letting you corner him. He's very good at that. Against Fiziev, he did really well. Against Drew Dober, he did really well because Drew was just standing right in front of him. And then there was one more, Nasrat. He looked almost untouchable because Nasrat just stood right in front of him, high guard, and Bobby just picked him apart. Obviously, anyone can get knocked out with 4-ounce gloves, so we do respect that. But the biggest thing is I don't want to stand in front of him, and I don't want to eat shots all night while trying to get my takedowns.
And you guys have I guess I wouldn't call it a history, but I got to admit, I watched your interview with MMA Junkie, and the story that you told about Bobby Green is pretty amazing. you want to share it for us, and then like maybe I'll have some follow-ups to it. But yeah, what was your first interaction with Bobby Green?
So when I was in high school, maybe right out of high school or just about to be out of high school, my favorite show other than watching UFC fights was Bully Beatdown. I loved Bully Beatdown. I wanted to be on Bully Beatdown when I was a kid so bad. I messaged almost every single male fighter that was on that show, and I just wanted to know, is the show real or is it all staged? Nobody messaged me back except Bobby Green. Bobby Green messaged me back, and I'm sure he doesn't remember this. And it was on Facebook. I kind of want to go back and see if I can find the message and post it. But he messaged me back and said, "No, dude, it's 100% real. That was so cool." And then something along the lines of like, "I see you're a fighter. Like, keep it up, man. You're, like the dream's real." So it was really cool. And I know Bobby's gonna be selling the fight. I know he's gonna be talking to me in the cage. But in the back of my head, I know this guy's a good guy. I know he's a good dude, and it's all to sell the fight. So I appreciate him getting the eyes on us. But he's a good dude.
You guys, have you never fought on the same card, or you never crossed paths where you could have brought it up to him like, "Hey, bro, you probably don't remember this, but have you ever had that opportunity?"
There was one because we're managed by the same manager. I think I fought. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Jared Gordon. I think it was Jared Gordon, and he was there or he was on the card. I can't remember, but he came into our hotel room. I think he was looking for weed, but I'm not sure. I think he asked for something like that.
You're the guy to go to in the hotel room for
No,
weed, is that?
absolutely not. But he came in and we chit chatted, and I was gonna bring it up, and then he had to go, so I was like, don't even worry about it. Like, he don't even remember me. It's no big deal. But
Yeah,
he was nice then too.
what a story though. And you were hitting those guys up on Facebook. You should definitely go back and try to find it.
I'm gonna see. I'm gonna once we get off, I'm gonna check my messenger and see if I can find it.
And tell me a little bit, and maybe this is because like my mom's a Nebraska girl, but you grew up in like a small town, right? Small town in Nebraska.
Yeah, small town doesn't really say it. There were 27 kids in my graduating class, including me. There were like 1,000 people. I think it's grown a little bit. I think they're at like 1,500 now, but it's a very very small town.
What's everyday life like on a small Midwestern town like that with 1,000 people what's everyday life like?
Boring, really really boring. Everybody there likes to talk. Everybody knows everybody's business. Every small town is the exact same thing. Everybody's bored, so everybody's in each other's business. But there were definite advantages to living in a small town. I didn't grow up around like gang violence. I didn't grow up, you know, worried about anything. There wasn't a bunch of, you know, stuff that a lot of these guys that live in big cities grow up having to deal with. So it was a blessing to live in a small town and be able to get my youth out of the way there. And then as an adult, kind of build up. I went small town and then decently sized town when I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. Then I moved to Missouri, and now I live in Florida. So it was like little baby steps.
What drew you to the UFC and MMA?
So I was really into football, like I said, was never playing, wasn't good at it. And I kind of realized like I'm not going to be able to get drafted to the NFL like my dream was, but I wanted to make sports my life somehow, and I really wasn't sure what to do. And my eighth grade principal, when we graduated from eighth grade to go into high school, he did a speech, and since it was such a small town, he went through each of us and kind of guessed where we would be after we graduated high school. And he said, "I think Grant's going to be a UFC fighter." It was a total joke. I didn't even know what it was at the time. I thought it was WWE. I thought it was fake. He's like, "No, like the UFC is like boxing. It's like real, but they do everything. They don't just punch." My buddy that was in class with me invited me over to his house one night to watch Rampage Jackson and Rashad Evans fight. And it's actually kind of a funny story. He was a friend of mine, but we didn't hang out a whole lot. And I was like, there's no way my mom is going to let me go there. I just got my driver's license. She doesn't know his parents. She doesn't let me stay out late usually. So there's no way she's going to say yes. So I was like, oh, I'll just ask. I'll just ask anyway. And I asked her, and she was like, yeah, that's fine. You can go. And I was like, it's like a UFC event, right? Like they're going to be fighting each other. She's like, yeah, you'll be all right. It's fine. And I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. So I went there, saw Rashad and Rampage fight. His dad was freaking out over Rampage. He wanted Rampage to win so bad. And I was just like, holy, this is so cool. Like, I have to do this. So I started training in the backyard. I started doing like YouTube videos and stuff like that. And we had a backyard fight night with my friends for like 2 months. They wanted to stop doing it. I wanted to keep going, found a real gym, and it's just been like climbing the ladder ever since.
Did you get some early like confidence and some early like vindication that you could be good at it? Because I'm just thinking like growing up in a town where there's 27 people in your graduating class and you're watching a UFC pay-per-view in Las Vegas. One of the guys is a Michigan State former wrestler. The other guy's been doing it in Japan for so many years. Like it would kind of feel like that world is so far away from where I'm at. Like did you get some early sort of indications that no, I can't be really good at this?
Well, I think what it was, there was three things that really kind of showed me that this is what I want to do. The first and the most important was when I told my parents about it. They were like, you can do anything that you're willing to work hard for. We believe in you. And it was just like, oh, I can literally do anything I want to work for. I'm passionate about this. I'll do it. And it didn't realize until I got older that like every parent tells their kid like, you can be whatever, shoot for the stars, and then they never actually get it. But I had no clue. I was like, oh, cool, if I work hard I'll get there. And so that was kind of my mindset. The other thing was in the backyard fights, I went 22-0, and we even had like a duct tape belt. And when my friends wanted to stop doing it, I was like, I still want to do this. Like, this isn't just a phase for me. Like, this is so much fun. I love to train. I love doing all this. I'm gonna go find a real gym. And so I went and found a real gym, got beat up a bunch, and was just like, you know what? I still like this. I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about what the Nebraska regional scene looked like, but it sounds like before that you were in your own little backyard promotion that you and your friends created, essentially.
Yeah, we had fights every Tuesday night. I don't know why we picked Tuesday. That was just the day that we picked. I'm not sure why. And yeah, we had a good like month or maybe a month and a half. Every Tuesday we all fought and we did multiple fights. I still have them on film, which I gave to the
Oh,
UFC. So they're actually going to play them in this upcoming fight. But yeah, it was pretty crazy because we were going full blast, kicks to the face, knees, elbows, everything. Like it was 100% green light.
what do all those guys think now? Who you used to fight in the backyard?
Uh, some of them message me every now and then, just like, you know, words of encouragement. It's pretty cool. Some of them don't even know I fight probably, but yeah, it's actually really funny because anytime I go home, nobody gives that I'm a fighter. Like everybody's just like, "Oh, are you still doing that boxing UFC stuff?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm still chipping away at it." And they're like, "Oh, well, keep it up. Hope you do well." Thanks,
Yeah,
appreciate it.
that's a good thing, right? I mean, the small town USA just keep you humble, not too excited that you're fighting at the Apex this weekend. Huh?
It definitely does keep me humble. They're just like, "Oh, because my actually it's funny, my cousin, I think it was one of my cousins, I fought Demir in the co-main event, and she was trying to tell her like friends at work. She was like, "Yeah, my cousin just fought in the UFC," and they were like, "No, no, no, no! Like, he fights MMA. Like, he probably doesn't fight in the UFC. He probably fights like a smaller promotion." And she's like, "No, he fought in the UFC," and they're like, "No, like UFC is like NFL level. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't fight in the UFC. Probably just, it's like, no, like my cousin fights in the UFC and he was the co-main event." And they're like, okay, like whatever,
Yeah, when
but
you have to explain what it is, yeah, it probably is going to keep you humble a little bit.
yeah.
There might not be anything that you have to say to this, but I want to bring it up anyway. So you said you're 22-0 in backyard fights, and you have only had one loss professionally, which means like is that it? Like you've over the course of your entire fighting career, you've only known the taste of defeat one time.
I lost as an amateur, like a real amateur. So I had
Okay.
22-0, 8-1, 21-1.
21-1. Yeah. So obviously a very, very, very good record. And the one loss that you had, like obviously the thing that stands out about it, I haven't seen it, but it was only 35 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it kind of almost reminds me of like a Sean O'Malley thing where he says that he's still undefeated, where he was like, what happened with me and Cheeto is just like I don't feel like I lost, like how do you feel about one professional loss and it was quick? Like what happened in it and how do you feel about it when you look back on
Well, it was definitely a loss because the dude knocked me unconscious. So he
it?
absolutely won that fight fair and square.
Okay.
The problem, and I know that Sean O'Malley is just he's just talking. I know when he goes home, he understands that he lost a fight. The issue is with kind of what he's saying. I feel like if you actually believe that, you can't get better. And the two biggest things that I learned from that loss Number one was I'm not a 55er at the time. I definitely am now, but at the time I was a lot younger. I was walking around like at 162 pounds, soaking wet, and I was fighting at 155. I would literally drink diet soda to make weight instead of, Dr. Pepper with my cheeseburger. It's like it was super easy to make weight. I needed to go to 145. That was the biggest lesson that I learned. And the second lesson was don't leave your head there. Because he got me against, I don't know if you know what happened, but I got him against the cage. I was in on a double leg, and he like Travis Brown elbowed and knocked me out. So that was a big lesson. Like, hey, don't leave your head there. Like, you got to come up to the body lock sometimes. So I learned from it. I got better from it, and I moved on. Same with the Ricky Glenn fight. I'm very happy that fight happened because that is what broke the camel's back to get me to Florida. However, I don't think that last round should have been a 10-8 round. Or if it was a 10-8 round, I think my first round should have been a 10-8 round because I took him down in 20 seconds and I had his back for the entire fight and was beating him up. So again, I'm very glad it happened. I learned what I needed to learn, and I didn't have to take a full-on loss to get there. And we got better. Anytime that I don't perform 100%, I get better from it.
Yep. Well, the last thing I'll ask you, man, and thank you again for the time, and I'm really looking forward to this fight,
Sure.
is that because of, like, I guess your approach, and you're just very you're very matter of fact, like you said, you're a realist. How much are you thinking about Islam Makhachev? And when you look at that guy and you're like, that's my goal at some point, A, how much are you thinking about him? B, what do you have to do? Like, what's gonna be the key? What has to happen between now and whenever you step in the cage with that guy that you will get that victory?
Man, I think about Islam Makhachev every single day. And the nice thing is I don't think he's thinking about me as he shouldn't. Who am I right now? But when we do fight, he will have had, let's say, 8 weeks to get ready for me. I will have been getting ready for him since I knew who he was. I've been preparing for Islam for years. And I think the one thing that separates me from the other guys that he's fought is I'm not intimidated by his wrestling because I can also wrestle. He's been taken down before by guys who don't have my type of control and my type of back control and back submission attempts. I do believe if I get him down one time, I've banked that round. I will take his back. I will throw the body triangle in. I will do everything I can to submit him. But if I don't submit him, I'm now up 1-0 against Islam Makhachev. I do believe that is what separates me from him. Also, I have specific plans, specific techniques that I'm good at that I don't show in fights to prepare myself to fight a guy like him. There's certain things that I'm working on that I've been working on for years that I'm really, really good at that, thank goodness, I haven't had to use in an actual fight yet. So there's no film of it.
I love it, man. I love it. I'm looking forward to this fight very much so. And I think if you win this against Bobby Green, a guy who's had a lot of experience, guy who has a lot of love for him in the sport right now, that things are going to pick up pretty quick for you. I don't think you'll be sitting around waiting 9 months. I think you're going to be getting the fights that you want, and you will be right there in title contention if you keep doing what you're doing. So thank you so much for the time, man. Looking forward to seeing you in Vegas.
Appreciate it, man.